Hey everybody, this is Gregory from Dapp University. So today I have another guest on the channel. I've got Matthew here from Loopring to talk about building a decentralized exchange. So welcome, Matthew.
Thanks for having me, Greg. Excited to be here.
Yeah, very cool. I'm glad to have you on. So, we're talking about building a decentralized cryptocurrency exchange today with some tools that Loopring has built. So maybe you want to explain that a little bit, Matthew? Maybe just kind of give us a pitch for what you guys are working on over there at Loopring.
Sure. So, as I'm certain most of your viewership is at on centralized exchanges where people go to trade currencies, whether it's Ether, Bitcoin, or any other altcoin out there, there are some risks, and most famously, those show up as large hacks that occur on these centralized exchanges, where $180 million will be siphoned from the exchange, or other tens of millions, and there's some extra large ones that have come up in history, and those are usually the greatest shockwaves that kind of re-push people towards the need for decentralized exchange, or really, Greg, the better word is non-custodial exchange, where you are the custodian of your own assets and the third-party exchange operator is not the custodian. So non-custodial is really the operative word, and a non-custodial exchange allows you to trade while never giving up ownership of your assets, never risk them being stolen. And the other attacks that are prevalent out there are the fact that a exchange operator can actually take funds themselves, or they could pretend that there's a hack when maybe they're the ones that actually hacked. So lots of weird incentives behind the scenes, and that's what DEXs, in one instance, are really great for.
Yeah, very cool. Thanks for that explanation. Yeah, if anyone's been around the blockchain or cryptocurrency space for long, I mean, a lot of us have heard of the Mt. Gox, disaster and things like that. And yeah, totally, it's crazy.
Right, right, and importantly, as crypto catches on, or as we hope it catches on, these honeypots, these centralized honeypots, are only getting bigger. So there's only reason to believe. And if actually you look back over the last 8 years, I think in dollar terms, 50% of the stolen value has occurred in the last year or year and a half. So it's heavily weighted towards the recent attacks. And obviously, as crypto goes mainstream, there's more at stake for these hackers. So yes, only going one way.
Right. Yeah, totally. So tell me how it works. How does a decentralized exchange work? And maybe specifically, how does a decentralized exchange built with Loopring work?
Right. So most broadly, and before getting into the Loopring specifics, although of course there is a lot of overlap, decentralized exchange allows you to plug in your non-custodial wallet, whether that's MetaMask or perhaps a Ledger hardware wallet, or perhaps if you're just accessing it with your private key or in your JSON file, it allows you to kind of port in your identity and not access a centralized exchange via the old username and password model. So you bring your own wallet, your non-custodial wallet, and in most cases you're presented with an interface, typical order book that people are familiar with, and you can create orders, take orders, trade, as we all know, trade, and the actual settlement happens on the Ethereum blockchain. So when a swap is ready to actually occur, let's say you're selling your Ether and I am selling my LRC, my Loopring token, at the moment of settlement, the two pieces of data, your address and what you're selling, and my address and what I'm selling, and a few other parameters, which we could skip over here, are into the Ethereum blockchain as a transaction, and specifically inserted into in let's say protocol smart contract, which is an open source smart contract that anybody can see, and it's been audited, and it has a function that when you insert the data packet of your order and my order, it trustlessly swaps your tokens for my tokens, all the while control of our assets, and settlement is kind of outsourced to the secure Ethereum blockchain. And that is at 30,000 feet up. I'm sure we'll get hopefully deeper into the details here on this talk, but that's the broad strokes.
Yeah, very cool. So basically, when two people want to trade with your platform, basically I hold on to my funds. Like say if you and I want to trade, I hold on to my funds and I want to trade them with you. I say I want to sell and you say you want to buy. And the exchange allows us to me to list that order and for you to purchase with that order, and the swap happens directly from our wallets. It doesn't live in this exchange like it would in a centralized way.
Right, that's exactly right. And I touched upon what's a more advanced point here, which is just worth mentioning. That's why I said kind of the operative word is non-custodial. Decentralized, like this, it's kind of like the mythical decentralized exchange. Is there one choke point that isn't in fact decentralized? And the truth is there's still centralization baked into most DEX architecture. And in this case, it is the fact that if you go on, let's say gregsdex.com, and I go on gregsdex.com, and I'm presented with this nice user interface, that is a point centralization. You are presenting me your order book. Let's say you're the ring miner in Loopring, which we'll go into in a second. Suffice to say that you're and using your order book I'm interacting with. So I'm still relying on X, and as the operator may suppress my order because you don't like me, or maybe you're only showing me some stale orders and you're keeping the good ones for yourself. So although you can't harm me in the most in the most malicious way, which is just stealing my assets, you could kind of mess with me and suppress orders. And so in this case, like a centralized order book is still, it's not decentralized. The good thing is that there could be in such Greg. So for you to be malicious is at your own business risk or your own peril. So
Right.
yeah, I'm not clear, but there's still centralization lurking in all these structures in the sense that an order book
Yeah, totally. Very cool. So maybe let's talk about how Loopring does some of this stuff.
Right. So what's unique about Loopring is, so first of all, we're a decentralized exchange protocol. We don't seek to actually build a single decentralized exchange per se. We allow anybody to operate their own DEX business. We're kind of empowering a new generation of entrepreneurs to spin up a business overnight, and really it could be overnight, and start this new project, a new decentralized exchange. One graph I'd like to show, which is helpful, and I just have this from a blog post, we kind of distinguish between the front end actors in the ecosystem, which are the wallets here, and the back end actors, which are the relays or ring miners. And we'll see why we call those in a second. So these wallets are what I said before. It's MetaMask, it's Ledger, or it could in fact be a non-custodial mobile Ethereum wallet, which when I show my face in a bit, I'll show you one that we have in the Loopring ecosystem. So all of these wallets are actually kind of what interacts with the user. These are the front ends. On the back end, when I create an order from one of these wallets, which is really just an interface, like when I plug in my MetaMask to, and I will switch screens here and do it here, this is Looper, looper.loopring.io. This is just a reference implementation showing what we could build with Loop. So I click unlock a wallet. I'm going to connect to Meta. And user will.
Oh, I lost you there for 1 second.
Sorry. Voting. Maybe I will get. We could fast forward through this. Okay, there we are. So Just trying to let it load. Okay. So I've unlocked my MetaMask wallet in Looper, which again, just an example of what you can build with this. And here, this is kind of my wallet screen. It shows my assets. I have a bit of LRC, a bit of Ether, a bit of WETH, which is wrapped Ether, which we could talk about at another time, but it's essentially the same as Ether. It's one-to-one conversion, just a bit of a wrapping to allow it to be traded by our smart contracts more easily. So this is my wallet, and really it's a MetaMask wallet, but this is just, you know, showing me the interface. Now, going back to here, so that is such a wallet. When I want to create a trade, the wallet that I'm interacting with sends the order, maybe again selling LRC for Ether, sends it to a back-end relayer. The relayer's job is to take all these orders from one or many wallets. As you can see, this guy is speaking to a few wallets, and take the orders, aggregate them, present them in an order book, kind of the best bid, the best buy price, the best ask, the best sell price, and present that. That's his job. And when he finds a match, he matches it. And as I said, he submits that to the Ethereum blockchain. That is actually how it gets matched. You take two sides of an order, submit it into a normal Ethereum transaction. It sits in the mempool waiting for a normal miner to mine it. And when that transaction is finally included in the blockchain, the smart contract executes and it sells your tokens for my tokens. Now, just scrolling back a little bit, I said we distinguish between the wallet and the backend. Collectively, we could call this a DEX. So Greg's DEX, if you want to start a decentralized exchange business, you could present a nice user interface or create your own mobile wallet, and you could create your own backend, which is a ring miner. It's just some software on a server that's matching orders and submitting them. And collectively, that's a DEX. And you could charge, let's say, 0.1% for every trade that gets executed on Greg's DEX. Now, alternatively, maybe Greg, you're just an amazing UI, user experience type of guy. You have an amazing wallet. You don't want to run a backend. This whole thing sounds complicated to you. So you're just a great wallet, and you want to offer your users, your wallet users, in-wallet exchanging. That's what we say when a wallet becomes a wallex. So Greg's wallet, which is just super awesome and pleasing to use, now is connected to a third party, maybe your buddy, your friend Sarah, who runs a relayer. You're sending her all your orders, she's matching them, and you guys are splitting fees. So that's what's unique about Loopring, is the fact that you could take one of these roles, two of these roles, or you could share. You could kind of insert whatever business logic there is. Maybe you and Sarah split fees 50-50, or maybe you only share fees with her on super large orders, like over 1,000 Ether. So there's a lot of kind of bespoke business logic that could be inserted. We really mean it when we say you could become your own entrepreneur. And the final thing I'll touch on is just the same way wallets could speak to multiple relays, or someone at a third-party relay. Relays then speak to each other to share liquidity. So you are running your own backend, but you're still speaking to Sarah's backend and Mike's backend, just for the greater good. So you guys could pool liquidity, because that's besides the safety in the non-custodial aspect of this, pooled global liquidity is the other hope of decentralized exchanges. And yeah, with that, that's kind of the next layer of how Loopring works, is this kind of in a few sentences.
Yeah, very cool. So sounds like you guys have got a couple different layers here, like you explained. You can start your own wallet interface. You can start, a ring miner in the background, but as a different layer. You could start both. You could split things up like that. You could take advantage of this pooled liquidity. So if someone's going to start a decentralized exchange, if the if the trades are wallet to wallet, essentially, right? Does the exchange actually have to provide any kind of funding in order to start the exchange?
Good question. Just to be clear, you mean like the new exchange operator? Do they have to provide funding?
That's correct.
Yeah, so that's a really great question, and actually something that I'm learning, not not the hard way, but just the real way by dealing with this is it's great. So we provide reference implementations of these wallets and of these ring miners. And as I said, we could literally spin this up tomorrow. However, that doesn't mean we're actually going to be a successful DEX. And that really touches upon the point of the liquidity. So, if you build it, they will not come necessarily. You need to kind of bootstrap your own DEX with liquidity. Maybe you focus on a couple trading pairs on Greg's DEX. You have 3 popular trading pairs, and you pay a professional market maker. Maybe you pay them a fee every month to actually make markets, make sure there's always a bid and an ask on those few trading pairs. Because otherwise, without existing liquidity, it's the classic chicken and egg problem. You start a DEX, literally, it's a barren order book. It's a very intimidating space. Then you kind of need a professional to kind of bootstrap, or that could be you, right? That could be you programming a few bots. You give it a few assets, maybe the most popular ones, such as basic attention token and OMG and DAI and Ether. That's it. And your bots constantly make markets, buys and sells on both sides to at least bootstrap the order book. So that is a really critical point, which every DEX eventually realizes. And, I must admit, I used to be somewhat naive and believe, that's the way the legacy financial system works. You need professional market makers. And in fact, that's why they exist, these broker dealers and professional market makers. And I thought that, global liquidity, permissionless liquidity would just spill over into all the DEXs of the world. But really, that is not the case. A DEX, after kind of getting the plumbing down and the nice user experience down, liquidity is everything, to be honest.
Sure. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Thanks for that explanation. That gives me a pretty good, I think it gives all of us a pretty good understanding of some high level concepts. Is there anything that you wanted to maybe go into detail, maybe that you're kind of find particularly interesting about this project that you want to share a little more in depth of? Sure.
Yeah. So I'll talk in points very briefly of how Loopring goes about DEXs. And is in the initial description, I said how we only talk to Ethereum for settlement, for the swapping of tokens. This is what we call a hybrid architecture of off-chain management, where orders are signed and relayed across people and shared, really in any off-chain medium. That could be text messages, that could be email, Telegram, that could be on your Dapp University page. You're just posting a bunch of data and you're submitting it to the Ethereum blockchain only for settlement. So that is a hybrid architecture. And the reason you do that quite clearly is to surpass the limitations to circumvent the limitation. Ethereum or any blockchain with, a non-zero time and non-zero fees, you don't want to create an order, pay 15 cents, wait 15 seconds, like, I actually want to increase that bid a little bit. Then you wait another 15 seconds, pay another 3, what you spent your fee before you're there. So that's a lot of this hybrid route of off-chain order. So not unique to Loopring per se. What is unique is something that we call, and where we get our name, where we get our namesake, is the fact that you can match orders across trading pairs. So historically, you need to live in kind of one order book, with Ether versus DAI, let's say, and you're trading back and forth. Loopring allows many orders to be looped and mined in a single transaction. So you're selling Ether for OMG, I'm selling OMG for BAT, Sarah's selling BAT for Ether, and I kind of lost track of myself, all the way up to 16 trading pairs. And the ring miner that we mentioned over here is kind of taking all these orders and stitching them together, trying to we call it a combinatorial algorithm, trying to match the best price for each person. So even though there may not be someone willing to sell OMG for DAI at your rate, by going through 4 or 5 other trading pairs, the ring miner could serve you up and improve liquidity. So that is actually very novel, and that's something Loopring is as far as I know, the only protocol that is building out that functionality, because it really does improve liquidity and it does allow for price improvement, is that ring mining, that order ring technology. The last thing I'll say, and there is more to get into, but the last thing I'll say is we also have a technology called dual authoring, which solves a very pernicious problem of front running that most DEXs face. And front running comes from the fact that when that miner finds a match between you and I, our OMG to OMG to Ether trade is completed, and he submits it in the blockchain to the Ethereum blockchain, it sits in the mempool where anybody could see, that's a nice juicy order. Greg is paying an extra high price for OMG. I am gonna take that order. I'm gonna steal it by just kind of mixing around some of the data. Instead of that other counterparty's address, I'm going to put in my address, and I'm going to increase the gas price, so I'm much more likely to be included and taken out of the mempool. And he will front run you. It's also a classical problem in legacy financial systems, but it's really notable in the DEX space, because you could have a person that makes a living listening, kind of like a snooper, listening for kind of these advantageous orders, and steals them himself or herself and submits them. So that is a really big problem, and that is like one of the biggest obstacles in the way of the big dream of networked liquidity, of where everyone's sharing orders with each other. Some solutions are to actually, wall your garden or close it so that you kind of make it so only one person could submit the transaction. In this case, it would be the ring miner or another relay in another type of architecture like 0x. They solve this problem by making things more strict, which has the unintended circumstance of making global liquidity, impossible. So all this to say, that's the background on front running, which is a useful concept. So I hope I'm not long-winded for nothing there, because it is a very pernicious problem. But Loopring has something called dual authoring, which our founder Daniel invented, and it basically is just a middle ground between an open order book and a closed order book. It doesn't allow anybody to come in and front run and steal your order from the mempool, but it also has a bit more kind of tailoring, a bit more granular logic. So in this case, back to this little diagram, which is quite helpful, when Greg's wallet creates an order, it actually generates an extra arbitrary key pair, an extra private key and a public key at that actually order instantiation. It takes that public key, puts it into the order hash, kind of like the order just data field that's out there for anybody to see, but it keeps that extra private key secret and only shares it with his friends. So Greg is keeping that private key, and he's only going to share it with Sarah's relay, Bob's relay, Alice's relay. So you're not precluding sharing of orders, but you are precluding the stealing of orders by malicious front runners, because they do not have your extra key pair. So that dual authoring, and I'll link to a post that goes in depth on it, but that dual authoring is actually a very key piece of the technology, which will allow for, again, more bespoke business logic and just shared liquidity. And so those things are kind of some of the more unique points of Loopring specifically, are the order rings and the dual authoring. Because as you may know, the DEX space is very busy, it's very competitive, but we do have a very strong technical roadmap and features.
Yeah, very cool. I like that explanation. Thank you. So, just really quickly, if someone wants to get started, where would they do that?
Yeah, so the best place would be to perhaps just poke around our website at loopring.org. Again, if you want to, and here you could go to the developer portal, and you'll be taken. Perhaps the most helpful is the documentation. Here you could learn a little bit about how we're structured, and the documents will let you kind of have at it. And again, we do provide a lot of reference implementations. So that Looper Wallex that we were speaking about before, here it is actually, you could fork it, reskin it, and have Greg's Wallex. I'm sorry I keep using you as an example.
All right.
You're the ultimate entrepreneur, it seems. So you could really just get started very easily by either, taking on one part of the ecosystem or another. And just to go back, perhaps like the best thing to end on would just be to actually show how a trade could work here. So here's my wallet, and I will go to an asset that I know has some liquidity. VEET. I hold no VEET here. This is just a token that that people have been trading on our platform. So I have no VEET, no transactions. But if I go to the trade VEET and VEET WETH pair, which again is just Ether, I should see. Okay, so here is a little bit of an order book.
Very cool.
We see the best bids here at 0.000176 ETH and the best sells. And again, you can see that liquidity is lacking here. The order book, the bid-ask spread is quite wide, and there's not that much depth. But again, we are at the stage where, we've been live on Ethereum mainnet for almost a year, since December 2017. We have a lot of projects building on us, about 15 projects building different parts of the ecosystem, whether it's front ends or back ends. But now, as I said, and it's extra close to my heart, is liquidity is super important, and we're going to start working with professional market makers to add more depth to these books. But so, excellent. Yeah, here's a price. I could fill up however much I'm looking to buy. I could place an order. Fees right now are payable in LRC. That was our order model in Protocol 2.1, our fee model. Fee model 2.0 is actually quite different, but a bit more advanced. So perhaps the topic for another day. But and I can see here that it expires in 1 day. I place the order. Now it is asking me to sign it, really kind of attest to my intent on MetaMask. And sorry, your head is in the way a little bit. I would sign this message. I would sign this message, and actually, I'm not going to click submit because I can't remember the price I chose. If it's ludicrous,
that's all right. We'll trust you that it works.
We'll trust. Yeah, I'm not sure. Like,
we're on the mainnet here, folks.
Yeah, we're on the mainnet. I'm not sure if I'm buying this at a crazy price, but I signed it. Now you can see that it's. I could submit it, and note that it's free. It says order submission is free and does not cost Ether, does not cost gas. That's because of our hybrid architecture. Remember, everything is off-chain until the mission-critical stuff, the actual settlement, when it's leaving my wallet, and that's happening trustlessly on the Ethereum chain. But all this it does not cost gas. If we were solely on-chain, clicking submit would cost gas, and that is suboptimal for many use cases. But yeah, so that's how it works. And yeah, I would recommend going to our GitHub at github.com/loopring. And yeah, that's pretty much it, Greg. I could go on, but I'm sure I'm out of time.
No, that's very good. I appreciate all those explanations. I'm sure everyone else has enjoyed as much as I have. I know I've learned a lot today. So Matthew, before we kind of wrap up here today, you mentioned we can find you on GitHub. We've seen the website. Is there anywhere else we can follow you guys on social media, Medium, something like that?
Yeah, Medium is just at Loopring Protocol. That's where release most of our updates. Twitter at loopring.org. At loopring.org is the next best place for kind of the most timely updates. Reddit, again, at loopring.org. Kind of everything there. Another a cool thing perhaps to play around with also is a mobile version of a Loopring Wallex. This is built by a partner in Hong Kong called Up Wallet. Just because a lot of people find this interesting, so maybe I should just speak about it. But you could download it. It's not in the iOS store, so you kind of have to enable it in your own settings. You have to trust it, but it'll spin up an Ethereum wallet. You could send over your bit of Ethereum and start trading. The exact experience I showed you here will be the same in your wallet. And in fact, to bring it full circle, both Looper, this screen, and the app that once you download here, they both speak to the same, it's not there anymore, they both speak to the same ring miner. So that just goes to show you that multiple different points of entry speak to the same order book. But of course, if Up Wallet wanted to, they could spin up their own ring miner and kind of go full circle.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. But yeah, that is it. And some of these reference implementations are actually housed at loopring.io. So not .org, which is the main website, but this just shows some of these implementations that people could play around with.
Awesome. Yeah, very cool. Well, again, thanks for coming on the channel today, Matthew. Everybody, be sure to check out Loopring over at loopring.org and loopring.io, and on Medium and Twitter and GitHub. And yeah, thanks again, Matthew, for coming on today. I'm going to go ahead and sign us off here. Like I said, I've enjoyed this. I'm sure everyone else has as well. It's found it educational and also fascinating. So again, thanks, and I'm going to sign us off. Until next time, thanks for watching Dapp University.
Thank you, Greg.